Thank you very much. Okay, good evening, everybody, and welcome to the licensing subcommittee. I'm now going to read out some protocols for the meeting. Okay, so if you could only speak to when invited to by the chair, all participating members to keep their camera on during the proceedings unless they are having a bandwidth connection issue. If you wish to speak, please raise your hand and direct all communications via the chair. Please could you ensure that your mics are muted when you're not speaking, apart from the chair, who doesn't need to mute their mic at any stage. If you're referring to a specific page or picture in the report, please refer to the page number. If you're having technical difficulties, please use the chat function in the Google Meet or drop me an email. Please do not use the chat function for putting formal questions to the committee or to make any other comments. Any persistent destructive behaviour will result in removal from the meeting. Thank you. So if we could now elect a chair, please.
Councillor Peters, took me a second to unmute.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you very much. In which case, people will see if they've got a copy of the agenda or have an electronic, either electronic or hard copy. But the second item is apologies for absence. Do we have any apologies for absence?
We don't, Chair, no.
Declarations of interest from members? Nothing from me. Nothing from Councillor Patrick. The next item is minutes of the previous meeting, which I don't think we have, do we?
Yeah, no, there are no previous minutes.
Wonderful. Okay, then we can move swiftly on to the licensing subcommittee hearing procedure. Do we have that laid out somewhere? I can't see it anywhere, but anyway. And then onto the, sorry.
Sorry, I can get that sent through. It should be within the folder. Let me just get that forwarded now, one moment.
Okay. I mean, it's an item on the order of business, but I think we know where it is.
If you want to go on, and then I'll get that together for you and send it through. Apologies.
Okay. So the sixth item on the order of business is the one substantive item that we have for decision today, which is the Museum of Home, Kingsland Road. There's an application for a premises licence, and that is set out in the pack, what the licence is for. And so we will have it presented to us by the licensing of the hearing officer.
Thank you, Chair. Licensing Service received an application for a premises license under Section 17 of the Licensing Act 2003 for Museum of Home, Kingsland Road, as stated in the agenda. Licensing has withdrawn their objection based on agreed noise management plan, which has been circulated. Only other person objection remains. Also, I would like to clarify the applicant name is not Museum of Home, it's the Jeffrey Museum Trust. I have nothing else to add. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. In which case, can we have the licensing officer? Sorry, the applicant rather. Lyndon, is it you?
Sorry, just trying to unmute myself. Yes, I was just going to read a statement to summarise. Museum of the Home is a vital part of the cultural landscape of London and has been called the jewel in the crown of Hackney. It's a well-loved, free museum with an extensive and popular programme of activities both on and off-site. Following a 3-year closure to renovate and open up the Grade 1 listed almshouses and gardens, vastly improving visitor access and facilities and creating new spaces, the museum is due to reopen in spring 2021 with 80% more space for visitors to enjoy exhibitions, events and the collections. Speaking at the end of 2020, the museum is in a very different place to where we expected to be when our current licence was granted. The effects of a global pandemic and a year's delay on the construction project means that the museum has lost £260,000 in projected income this year alone. The ongoing impact of the pandemic will significantly affect the museum, the number of visitors we can welcome, and our capacity to earn for several years to come. Now more than ever, Museum of the Home needs to maintain a premises licence to ensure a sustainable, financially secure future for the museum. In the past 6 years, our core government funding has been reduced by 11%, a real terms loss of approximately £200,000. So we're more reliant than ever on being able to earn and fundraise income. We want to continue to welcome diverse audiences from Hackney and beyond through a mixed programme of arts, cultural activity and events, alongside a varied retail food and drink offer on site. We've used the last few years to pilot different types of commercial events, maximising our limited spaces and broadening the range of events to include plays, outdoor cinema, interactive installations, yoga classes and food festivals. These have been well attended by the local community and visitors from across London and planted the museum more firmly on the capital's cultural map. Attracting new audiences and maximising earned income is an essential part of our long-term business planning commitment with the Department for Digital, Culture, Media and Sport. This is a direction that the entire cultural sector has moved in. We believe that the museum has consistently acted as a responsible and approachable organisation. We've accepted all conditions and suggestions made by relevant authorities in this and previous licences and take the upholding of licensing objectives very seriously. The police, environmental health and other relevant authorities are satisfied that we're operating in a safe and responsible way and have withdrawn their representations. All commercial events are carefully chosen and managed to minimise any risk of nuisance to neighbours. All have operated within the obligations of the premises licence. We've rejected hire inquiries that we felt would present a risk and ensured that the conditions of the licence are embedded in all venue hire contracts. We've worked solely with established, experienced event management companies, caterers and security. We're in regular contact with our immediate neighbours, sending general updates on the capital project and programme, as well as hosting open events for face-to-face discussion. Lockdown has meant that our offices have been largely empty this year, with most of our team furloughed or working remotely, but we hope to be more physically available to our communities from early next year when the museum reopens its doors. The Capital Redevelopment Project has given us the opportunity to relaunch the events business, recruiting new, specialised staff and taking a fresh approach to event management, with clearly set out policies and procedures in place prior to museum opening. The vast majority of events we have hosted have run without causing any issues. Instead, they've elicited positive feedback and repeat visits. The rare few complaints that have been made in the last 3 years were dealt with immediately and recorded in an incident log. We've shared the operations mobile number with our neighbours so that they have a direct line to call if there is ever a disturbance. The museum has no intention to become a late night venue or run events 7 days a week. The vast majority of licensable activity will happen during the daytime, with special events spread sporadically through the year. What we're asking for with this licence is the flexibility to host different types of activity that may complement the museum's programme and ultimately provide a better, more stable cultural hub for Hackney. All profits made from these activities go straight back into the museum's charitable trust. Our current licence was timed to allow for a year's operation with the museum open so that we could test events within the new building. Delays to the project mean that we haven't had the opportunity to do that and have in fact run 0 licensable events in 2020. Without the income generating opportunity of a premises licence, a sustainable, financially secure future for the museum is at risk. With regards to the statue of Sir Robert Jeffrey that has been mentioned in some of the representations, the Board of Trustees and museum team are continuing to proactively review, discuss and explore a number of options for the statue with community, creative and funding partners. This is a complex process which we know will take time. We're in detailed discussions to find a way forward which is best suited to the museum and our communities. And that's it.
Thank you very much. Just for everyone else present, I should just maybe go back a step and say what we're going to do is we'll hear from the applicant, we'll hear from the other persons as the legislation has it, which is essentially residents, and then we'll have a broader discussion phase. So right now we're just hearing from the applicant, and there's an opportunity now for myself or Sharon, who's the councillor, Patrick, who's the other member of the panel, to ask questions. Actually, before we do that, we should probably do a round table so that everyone can introduce themselves, because we haven't done that, for which I apologise. My name is James Peters. I'm a councillor in de Beauvoir, and we've got Councillor Patrick here as well. You might want to introduce yourself.
Hello, Councillor Sharon Patrick, Kings Park Ward.
We have a hearing licensing officer here.
I'm Subhash Ramana, Principal Licensing Officer.
And we've got Jessica.
Sorry, just unmuting. I'm Jessica Feeney, and I'm the Governance Services Officer.
Amanda.
Hello, good evening. My name is Amanda North from Legal Services, assisting members this evening. Thank you.
We have another councillor on the call as well, Councillor Fajana Thomas, who is observing.
Hi, good evening, everyone. I'm Susan Fajana Thomas, observing the procedure tonight.
We have Mario here, who is here to provide technical support. Mr. David, did you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm David Tewett. I'm Team Leader, Licensing and Technical Support, just observing today.
Thank you. We've had Ms. Linden. Mr. Robertson, you're also here for the applicant, are you?
Yes, I'm the Operation Manager at the Museum of the Home and will be designated Premises Supervisor.
Wonderful. Dixon.
Hello, I'm Emma Dixon. I'm also from the Museum of the Home, Communications and Commercial Development.
Wonderful. Mr. O'Brien.
Hello, sorry, Max O'Brien. I live at 11 Sovereign Mews.
Have you made a representation?
Yes.
Do you have the pack of documents in front of you?
Oh, I believe I do. I had the link that was sent, and I had a couple of documents within that.
Do you know which? So it's at the end. There are the representations from other persons, from residents, and they are numbered Appendix C1 to C5, I think it is.
Sorry, Councillor. He's on C3.
C.
Oh, thank you.
3. Okay, wonderful.
If it's sorry, if it's okay, I'll also speak on behalf of Emma Koch, who was unable to attend, but has asked that I kind of just read a little statement for her, if that's okay.
Okay, and she's Appendix C4, I understand.
Thank you.
And Mr. I've got you down as Mr. Grench Margaret, but you seem to be Mr. Gresh on the call here. And you're on mute.
Yeah, that's me. I live at number 13 Sovereign Mews. Dan Greck is fine. And I did make a representation, but I don't have the paperwork with me actually, so I don't know what number that is.
Jessica may be able to help.
Yeah, he's on C5.
Okay, wonderful.
Councillor Peters, the gentleman who doesn't have papers, if he's able to access them online, that may assist.
I can send through the link.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Cool.
Thank you.
Now that we know each other, if everyone could just go on mute, and this is an opportunity for myself and Councillor Patrick to clarify anything that we haven't understood in the application. Now, I do have a couple of things about the scope of the physical scope of what is being requested. There are some drawings further down in the pack at the end of the application, and there's one version with a red line just around the building, and there is one with a red line around the entire property, including the external areas. From what is said in the application, I assume that the application is to license the entire property, including the external areas.
Yeah, this is what our current licenses, so it's within the building and the gardens that surround it.
Okay. And the green arrows are exits, are they?
Michael, you might be better placed to answer these because you did those drawings, didn't you?
Yes. So I can't see them in front of me, but as far as I recall, any of arrows designate dedicated fire exits for the building and the grounds.
Okay, wonderful. So just to, I'll come to Councillor Patrick in a second to see whether she has any queries, but you said that there was a 1-year license. I understood that the current license ran from September or so 2018, is that right?
Yeah, sorry, what I was referring to with the year was it was to be a year that the museum had been reopened and operating. So we had, part of it was granted, so we would have been able to do some things outdoors, but since the redevelopment project then opened the actual indoor spaces, it would allow us to do licensable activities in a different area and in a different way, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So I think I sat on the original application, and I think Councillor Patrick may have done so as well.
Yeah, you did.
And originally, I think what was discussed was that there's a need to be able to use the outside spaces while the interior was being renovated. But now I think the understanding was that then there would be a reversion back to internal license only, used for the internal areas for licensable activities. Is that not the case?
I don't think it was an agreement that we would never use the outdoor spaces, but that we wouldn't have to rely so heavily, because the last couple of years we've had no other spaces to use. Once the museum reopens, we will have lots of internal spaces where we can put meetings and evening events, and it'll be quite a different situation.
Okay. Thank you. And I think actually, so there were 2 applications, weren't there? There was one for the original time-limited license, and then there may have been an extension. Is that right or not? Or am I misremembering?
For the last license?
Yeah.
I don't think so. I think there was just one license application.
Maybe wrong. Yeah. Councillor Patrick, did you have any?
Yes, please, Chair. I just wanted to clarify, because something came through at the last minute about some revisions to hours, and I just wanted to clarify what hours the museum is asking for, and whether there's a difference in the hours between outdoors and indoors, because yeah.
So I think just to clarify that, I think that we're talking about the night management plan, and then on the noise management plan, rather, on the second page, there's a reference to licensable activities ceasing at 22:30, and then everything be cleared by 2300. Whereas and that seems to relate to licensable to just the outdoor areas. And actually that links into the fact that in the hours actually requested in terms of supply of alcohol and closing time of the premises don't allow for any drinking up time. So should we be, are you asking to amend the hours for licensable activity to end at 22:30, or should you be?
So ideally we would keep the application as is, that for alcohol it finishes at 11 p.m, but we were, as agreed with David, happy to put in an earlier time for outdoor events to allow for that kind of earlier finish and earlier getting everyone off the premises.
So usually we do provide for 30 minutes of drinking up time, because otherwise, you know, you're selling until 2300 hours and then until 11, and then, you know, you serve someone and then you're telling them they've got to leave, right?
Yeah, well, we've built into our general policies, we have a half hour of drinking up time normally, but we put into the noise management plan, literally trying to get everyone away by 11, whereas we hope that we would have a bit more grace with indoor spaces, that they could, particularly if we're doing potentially slightly more complex events, that they would have longer to leave without having to get in the way of anyone. But it's not a massive issue, that half an hour for us.
I would. It would be better to have a 10:30 end to the sale of alcohol
As a blanket across all spaces and all days.
Well, yeah, I mean, because if the opening hours of the premises are 11 o'clock, then you're supposed to actually, close and put people outside at 11 o'clock, right?
Okay.
So is that something you're okay with?
Yeah, I don't think that would make very much difference with the kind of events we're looking to host, to be honest.
Okay. Councillor Patrick, does that address your question?
Yeah, so no alcohol anywhere after 22:30, and we're keeping the closing hours at 2300 hours. Okay,
Cool.
yeah.
In which case, shall we move on to hear from the other persons? And if we start with Mr. O'Brien asking for himself and for Miss Koch.
Sure, certainly. I'll kick off with my objections. I just want to start by saying how much I, like all my neighbours, love the Jeffrey Museum. I've been a regular visitor for over 10 years throughout my entire time living at 11 Sovereign Mews. We have had many, many dealings with the Jeffrey Museum in the past when it comes to their licence and the effect that their events have on the residents of Sovereign Mews. We've been in close contact in the past, both with their directors and their events team over this matter over the years. In the past, when they've applied for a license, they've reached out to us and they've plastered notices on the exterior of their property. And I think it's very, very interesting that this time, no one in the Mews heard from them. No one was contacted and none of us spotted a single notice. It certainly appears to me that the Jeffrey Museum have tried to slip this application past us because they know what the impact of this will be on us, on our homes and on our lives. We know all too well what an event in the Jeffrey Museum means for us. We've had bass pumping through our walls, utterly inescapable, children unable to sleep due to the music, the smashing of bottles after events, waking us up between midnight and 2 a.m, far, far later than their licensable hours. It's vital, I think, that we focus on the events that take place outdoors, because that's really all I'm personally interested in, and I think I speak for my neighbours in that. I mean, any event with music outdoors at the Jeffrey Museum disturbs us. It penetrates our homes, and shutting our windows does little to help with the acoustic disturbance. Whilst I fall into the category of having young children, it's worth noticing, I should say, that the Mews has a lot of very elderly residents who are home 24/7 and whose lives stand to be particularly negatively affected by the granting of this licence under the terms currently applied for. Our objections to this astonishingly sweeping licence are not based on conjecture, they're based on bitter experience. In the past, when I was away for the weekend, my heavily pregnant girlfriend had to waddle over to the museum to beg them to turn the music down at 10 p.m. She was given an email address to complain to, but of course nothing was done to address the horrendous noise disturbance which left her unable to sleep. It's worth noticing that whilst the noise management plan states that there won't be bands allowed in the outdoor spaces, I just want to be clear that this is not the issue, and it never has been. The issue is recorded music, DJs, playlists. This is the music that disturbs us when the events are on. So I'm really begging you to protect us from this kind of awful disturbance by forbidding the playback of recorded music in the garden, in the museum's outside spaces. I truly, truly hope that you will protect us residents from the kind of almost unimaginable situation in which the Jeffrey are legally allowed to have music in their garden from 9 a.m. in the morning until 11 p.m. at night, 7 days a week. And whilst I appreciate that their representations make clear that this isn't their intention. I'd ask you, councillors, to somehow write this into their licence, that in a way that doesn't allow them to play music, you know, under these hours in our quiet residential streets. As for the alcohol licensing, why a museum would be granted a license which includes the takeaway sale, as I understand it, of alcohol between 10 a.m. I should say, and 11 p.m. 7 days a week, I simply don't know. The granting of this license, I believe, will lead to a rise in antisocial behaviour in the neighbourhood. We've already had an increased amount of crime in the street recently. There are endless bars, pubs, restaurants in the neighbourhood, and the sort of adult drinking population is well served already in the neighbourhood. So I would say, please do not grant them this licence and allow the clientele, the drinking clientele of the museum, to disturb our quiet streets further. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Grech, Mr. O'Brien, can you mute yourself?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I think Max has covered everything I was going to say. I just want to back him up really and say that I think all of us residents feel the same. Like he said, these aren't sort of hypothetical objections. We've experienced all of this in the past already. And, you know, I've read the sort of the things that you're trying to suggest that will reduce noise, but it doesn't work, you know. And even having noise limits, we'll still hear it. That, you know, you're talking about a crowd, you can't limit the noise a crowd makes when they're clapping and cheering. You know, the points that they put across about trying to limit noise is, yeah, it simply doesn't work. So I just think to ask for a license to 11 p.m, if you just think about what that means, 7 days a week. I know that they're not planning on putting events on 7 days a week, but to have the ability to do that, I mean, even to 9 p.m, that's so late. You know, it's so noisy. There is, you know, things like which way their speakers face. It doesn't work. You know, we are so close. The museum is right in the middle of a lot of homes. It's not a park somewhere where you can put a stage in the middle of it. And acoustic concerts, they come with microphones. Unfortunately, all of that noise is really disruptive. So just backing up everything Max says, we love the museum, we're so supportive of it, but our real objections is outdoor licensing in the garden just can't be possible. And 11 p.m is crazy. Yeah.
So there's a question that I think we'll come to in a second, which is about what actual powers we have in respect of recorded music. But is your point not just about recorded music, but any licensing activity happening outside in the exterior areas?
For me, it's in the evening is the issue. If it was a daytime thing, I would feel a lot less strongly about it. But going into an evening, any day of the week really is obtrusive, but particularly Monday to Friday.
And what counts as the evening for you?
Probably anything past 7 p.m, because children need to go to bed and people need to come home from work and be able to relax and not having to listen to an event that's happening literally a few meters away from their bedroom.
And you and your family have been disturbed by events happening. And
absolutely.
Have you raised those with the Jeffrey Museum?
I haven't myself, because they were few and far between in the past. But the issue here for me is the fact that they're asking for a license to be able to do this whenever they want. And it's all, you know, they can say that it's not going to be that often, but if they have the ability and the legal license to do it 7 days a week, then they could.
Yeah. Mr. O'Brien, you concentrated on amplified music. Is that you're also concerned with any licensable activity outside, or is it just recorded music?
I mean, I think it's the music that disturbs us, but as Dan says, the any kind of crowd noise, cheering, clapping is likely to raise some kind of disturbance. But I think the music is what's particularly acute. And
do you share Mr. Gret's concerns being about just the evening, or
yeah? I mean, evenings are by far the worst.
Okay. Thank you very much. Councillor Patrick, did you have any questions for Mr. Grech or Mr. O'Brien?
Just wanted to clarify. So you're basically saying that your problem is with music outside after 7 o'clock in the evening, certainly Monday to Friday.
Sorry,
Sorry,
Max.
Dan. No, you go first.
No, I was going to say, particularly any outdoor event after 7 p.m. I think is intrusive. I mean, I still think it is really intrusive on weekends. If it's something that could end up being like they've stressed that they want to increase their events to bring their funding back, this could be every weekend. I mean, even though it's a Friday and a Saturday, that's still really intrusive when you live a few meters away. So I would say, personally, I would request that the outdoor license is not there in the evening, 7 days a week, personally.
Yeah, I would concur with Dan there. Thanks.
And you're both Sovereign Muse, right?
Yes.
And it is just a matter of being over the wall from the property, isn't it?
Yeah,
we are so close.
We're separated by about 3 bricks.
So,
could I double check? I can't remember from last time. Where Sovereign Muse is in relation to the museum? Is it at the back or is it at the side?
We share a wall with the museum. Our garden wall is their garden wall.
Yeah, but we're
sort of to the side. We're just to the north.
So you're sort of near the station, that end.
No, that would be the south. So we're at the other end, sort of next to the herb garden and the outdoor space.
Right, I know exactly where you are now. Okay.
Wonderful. So I think we've closed the part of the meeting where we speak to we hear from the applicant and we hear from the other persons, and now we enter.
Sorry, Councillor, I just had to read Emma Koch's.
Yes, go ahead. Yeah.
Apologies. I'll just very quickly read what she sent to me verbatim, if that's all right. Sovereign Muse in the past developed a good line of communication with the museum, so I'm hoping that can be restored as we are fully supportive of their success. After all, there's only one wall between us, or only a wall between us. We are a gated Muse directly next door. My flat is number 1, beg your pardon, my flat is 1 floor up, and I look over the museum's beautiful garden. Our residents, including babies, young children and pensioners, we managed to manage ourselves, and I'm one of the Muse directors and I've lived here for over 21 years. I chose my home due to the proximity to the museum and love the fact it was considered a family museum. Finally, I fully supported the museum and I'm looking forward to its reopening as I regularly visit with my friends and family. Personally, I'm disappointed not to have heard directly from the museum because previously there was good email communication with the Muse and they had the contact info both for the chairman and the directors of the Muse. Here are the objections I have to the length of hours both for alcohol and outside music for the noise, as these hours will be a public nuisance. Number 1, my main concern is the length of the hours, 7 days a week, both for music and alcohol. We are always disturbed by any event the museum holds, and not always in a negative way, i.e. Christmas carols, for example. But as we do hear all events, I 100% object to any event going on until 11 p.m, 7 days a week. I suggest for both noise and alcohol, 11 a.m. to 9:30 p.m, Monday to Saturday, and 12 p.m. to 9 p.m. on Sundays and bank holidays. This is a community/residential area, not just at Sovereign Muse, but generally. Most of us purchased our properties due to the tranquil grounds this family-focused museum offered. I would suggest alcohol consumption is restricted to on the premises only. I object to the idea of takeaway. Why? The last time this license was granted, there was an increase of alcohol debris, including empty bottles and cans in the surrounding areas, including the bushes in the front of the museum on Kingsland Road. Another point she raises is, I'm assuming films will be via headphones, ? What about plays and plays with singing or live music? Regarding crime and disorder, I object to being in such close proximity and would expect security on the gates and a museum representative on the grounds at all times during opening hours. Would the council consider extra CCTV added to the surrounding areas as we're experiencing an increase in crime anyway? Regarding children's safety, I said before, this is a residential area with many children. The alcohol hours will not make it safe for children in the surrounding areas, especially if alcohol is allowed to be taken off the premises to consume in the street. The Jeffrey Museum has always been considered a child-friendly museum. Are the events this licence is being applied for aimed at children or adults? These hours indicate adults, and there are countless other adult establishments in Shoreditch and Dalston for adult-driven entertainment. Public safety. My concerns regarding safety have been explained above, but I will add that as a resident, I'd feel safer on my local streets with my suggested alcohol in opening hours. Therefore, I object to the hours also based on public safety. At what time will the thousands of glass bottles and cans be recycled now, and how? Last time I was woken up daily between 12:30 and 2:30 a.m. by them tumbling into recycling trucks. The museum did change the hours of this, and I was very grateful. Final point, will security be present at all times? And she closes, my objections are based not on personal experiences. I beg your pardon. My objections are based on personal experiences with the Jeffrey Museum and when they were granted a license in the past, and are therefore not hypothetical. And she's finished.
Thank you very much. The hours that she asked for were 11 a.m. to 9:30 p.m. Monday to Friday, and then midday to what time at the weekend?
She said midday to 9 on Sundays and bank holidays.
Oh, Sunday and bank holidays. Yes, so as I precipitously said, that's the end. Well, actually, unless Councillor Patrick has any questions to Mr. O'Brien on what he just read, we can.
Whether you've been, I know the museum garden hasn't been open this year, but whether you've had any problems the year before when the garden was just opened, or your complaints go back to when the museum had a different license?
I think our complaints go back from when the museum started having these events. We haven't complained recently about any specific events in my household. I believe there may have been some from other people in the muse, but I couldn't promise.
Okay, thank you.
So, Ms. Linden, did you have something to add on that?
Yeah, just to verify, obviously we haven't had events in the last period because of COVID, but the previous period to that, I didn't receive any complaints from Sovereign Muse on that period of events in the summer as to how they were run. So as far as I was aware, we were keeping them in control for them.
So you're talking about 2019, are you?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So we'll just move on into the discussion phase of the meeting. And this is a discussion that is supposed to be led by me as the chair. And the idea is to try to elicit information to allow myself and Councillor Patrick to take a decision on this application. So I think that there are a number of points that we can pick up from the representations made, both written and that we've heard here this evening, and hopefully what we've heard may allow us to narrow somewhat the objections and skip what we need to discuss.
Sorry, Chair. Perhaps we could let people know what we can and can't do on recorded music before we get into the discussion phase.
Yeah.
Because
yeah. So, Amanda, you're there, aren't you?
Sorry, I just thought I might assist.
No, yeah, absolutely. You're entirely right. Amanda, if we are to license these premises,
yeah,
do we have any power to prevent recorded music from being played or other entertainment before 11 p.m.?
They do need a license for the recorded music, but before 11 p.m. there is there's deregulated music that they don't need a license for that if they're playing just like background music.
If it's just background music?
Yes.
Okay.
Recorded music does require a license.
Even before 11 p.m.?
No, it doesn't require one, sorry, before 11 p.m. No.
So if we're to license the premises, then we can't place any restrictions on the use of recorded music or any other entertainment before 11 p.m.
That's correct, yes.
If we are, say for the sake of discussion, we were only to license the interior of the Jeffrey Museum, would then the museum be able to hold events with recorded music outside until 11 p.m. without having a license?
Yes, they should be able to, yes.
Suba, did you want to say something?
Sorry, Chair. It's just if the audience is going to be beyond more than 500, even during the daytime, then they require a permission. They require a license.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, I wasn't sure that it was going to be more than 500. Sorry, I didn't clarify that.
Okay.
I mean, I don't know the size of what capacity they're expecting to have there. Maybe I don't know if that needs to be clarified.
Ms. Linden?
Generally speaking, it would be a lot less than that. The numbers within the building, we're looking at kind of 80 to 150, maybe if it was fully standing within one of the spaces. The Lawns has a much higher capacity, but we don't generally put on any of the kind of larger events that we have. It's not normally more than a couple of hundred at any one time. I was aware of these restrictions, so the plans that we have in the noise management plan have generally been put in on the basis of what we think might help with our neighbours. So it is something that we're ready to have a discussion on.
Yeah. So, and for the benefit of Mr. Grech and Mr. O'Brien, this is legislation that came in 2012 or so that deregulates what was previously regulated entertainment. So if we license this premises, then there's something of a genie coming out of the bottle that we can't stick back in, and will mean that music and entertainment will be able to happen until 11 p.m. unless there are more than 500 people there. Mr. Grech, did you have something to say?
Yeah, it was just clarifying what that actually meant. So if you give the Jeffrey Museum a license of any sort, then you can't control music inside or outside. I thought that there was a difference between applying for an outdoor license and an indoor license. So you're saying that isn't actually the case, that if you give them a license, they're allowed to play music up until 11 p.m. regardless. Is that what you're saying? Sorry, I don't quite understand.
Yeah, that's why we're trying to get to the bottom of.
Yes, then there aren't any controls in place unless we, if we want to have any conditions in place there, we'd need to go through a different process.
So just to really clarify the point, if we just license the inside of the premises, even the outside of the premises would be unregulated insofar as the entertainment goes until 11 p.m. provided there are fewer than 500 people.
Yeah, unless it's over 500, then we don't have the power to restrict it or sorry, Suba wanted to say something.
Okay, just a small clarification. So we can make it licensable again as part of following a review application.
If you want conditions, though, isn't it? if only if you want specific conditions on there, then we would ask for a review. But we're not as proposing conditions, are we, at this stage?
Well, I mean, we may want to do so, and we may want to restrict the use of regulated entertainment outdoors to 7 p.m. or 9 p.m. or something, rather than the 11 p.m. But what I'm hearing is that we can't do that at this meeting. All we can do is decide up to 11 p.m. or nothing at all.
Yeah, that's the current position at the moment, unless because the numbers are substantially less than 500. We're limited in what we can do.
Okay.
They don't need a license to play recorded music anyway, do they? It's not connected with the alcohol license. It comes under noise nuisance, doesn't it?
The recorded music, they do need a license. It's only if it's background music they don't need a license.
Sorry, background music. Yeah, sorry.
Chair,
so they can play background music without a license, but recorded music, it's up to us. They're asking for a license to play recorded music, which we can restrict. Is that what you're saying?
We can't put restrictions on up to 11 p.m.
Right. Okay.
There's no restrictions as such.
Unless there are over 500 people.
Yeah.
Chair, can I ask double check what measures does the premises have in place for dealing with the local residents? I mean, have they got? Are they having regular meetings or anything, or communicating with them? Because that might be a way of helping to.
Well, I think we can come to that in a minute. I think a number of hands up. Miss Minden.
I just wanted to say I could follow on to that point in a minute, but just to say to Max and Dan, I mean, we've had a license where we've had this same ability to put on events multiple days of the week and late. And as you said yourself, Dan, the events have been few and far between, because that's all we've kind of looked to do. With our museum reopening, as I said, we're going to be able to have lots more events indoors, which is what this license is particularly important for. The crowd noise that you mentioned, it's something that our museum is going to be busier, particularly in the daytime, but also having evening events. So that's something that maybe we should talk a little bit about more. I did just want to address as well the issue that was brought up a few times about the kind of long hours, the daytime hours, and the question of takeaway alcohol. So the early hours are to enable us to sell alcohol within our shop. So this is our museum shop where we may have like gift alcohol. We don't allow alcohol to be taken off the premises as part of our license conditions that is open. Any events that we have that are serving alcohol in open containers has security at the gates to stop people taking it away. We're not able, when our gardens are just open to the public, if anyone wants to bring in a beer when it's just open and the gates are open, we can't control that. But just to clarify, the takeaway element of the license is museum shop, and it's for closed containers that are taken away as gifts or something to have at home. It's not to drink on site.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Grech.
Just to go back there then on that point, one of my issues is the fact that you've sort of said yourself in your opening statement that you want to put a lot more events on, you want to bring a lot of revenue back in through events. So I can't base it on previous experience in terms of the amount of events. And also the whole point of your 3-year refurbishment is that you've sort of doubled the size of the capacity, so it's going to be a lot more people. So I don't think we can just sort of look back to how it has been in the past, and as Max has pointed out, it has been an issue when those events have been on. But I still don't quite understand, sorry, the thing about licensing. So are we saying that if recorded music and background music are the same thing, where if you've got an alcohol license, so if you grant the Jeff Museum an alcohol license, they are allowed to play background music and recorded music outside until 11 o'clock, regardless. Is that what you're saying?
Provided that it's not statutory nuisance, that's my understanding. Yeah.
But if we're saying it is a nuisance, then I don't quite understand.
There's a difference between, statutory nuisance is the legal term, which environmental health would have to come round and judge the levels in your property. And if it was loud enough to say, I don't know, to stop you hearing your TV or your music, then that would be a statutory nuisance. It's a legal term rather than regard to noise nuisance. So I don't know. That's how I understand it. But I don't know if Amanda wants to.
So it certainly puts us into quite a difficult position. This Amanda. So.
All I was going to say is it is very difficult to prove the statutory nuisance, but have you actually, through the chair, have the local residents made complaints to the council at all about noise nuisance recently?
So I think we've just gone through that, and they haven't, because there haven't been any events.
Okay, that's fine.
Mr. O'Brien, did you have something to add to this?
Yeah, I'd just like to zoom in for one horrendous second on what Councillor Patrick just said. I mean, I would beg you to listen to her, because I think she's made our argument for us. The idea of a license of that scope and the potentially grave ramifications are just kind of unfathomably awful. And I mean, I would sort of suggest, I'd be interested to know from the councillors, are we saying that if limitations on music can't be sort of stipulated separately, that the only protections that the councillors can offer the residents of Sovereign Mews and the kind of surrounding area are to just limit the hours?
Well, no, that wouldn't help either, is my understanding. Even if we were to license this premises for 1 hour between midday and 1 o'clock or something, and Amanda will correct me if I'm wrong on this, then it would still be able to play music until 11 p.m.
Can I ask one thing? What about pubs that, because there's quite a lot of them, that are licensed until 11 p.m. but have a rule that no one's allowed to drink outside after 9 p.m. for example? How does that work then?
So that can be conditioned. That's not about.
Could we not put conditions into this license then?
That people wouldn't be allowed outside
after a certain time.
Yeah, it's an interesting idea.
I think that's possible.
I mean, I think that would solve a huge amount of problems from our perspective if there is a sort of sensible cut-off period at which time the garden isn't used, because that's really the only issue from our perspective, really, is the garden area.
Okay, one nuance to this discussion is what I think Amanda didn't mention earlier, which is, or Suki mentioned earlier, which is that conditions can be placed on the license, but only through a review process, not through the initial application process. So that doesn't help us here and now. Okay, can I just, Ms. Linden, so I do remember a lot of hesitation about licensing the exterior when we heard this application, well, the previous application back in 2018, and there were lots of concerns from residents and concerns about the noise nuisance that had been caused from them. Now, I'm told by the licensing officer that there have been a number of noise complaints throughout 2019, few in May, few in June, July and September. Are you saying that you're not aware of those complaints, or that they didn't come from Sovereign Mews?
So there were a couple of people I was in contact with, but who were from the Jeffrey Estate, which is opposite on Kingston Road. There was someone I was talking with who we had some outdoor theatre, and they were bothered by the sound of voices. And I had contact from someone else who there was a daytime fitness class, which was a family event, and they'd made a complaint about the music that was played for that fitness class. I'm not, to my memory, I don't think I had any direct complaints from Sovereign's Muse, and I was in touch a lot when I was working. There's been a gap obviously this year, partly because of COVID, partly I've been on maternity leave, which unfortunately I think is part of the reason why there wasn't that direct contact when we were applying for the license. Although I would like to be clear that we did put notices around, and we did put an advert in the newspaper. So the complaints that I was aware of, I responded to and I dealt with. The ones that I didn't know about, I still don't know about. So that's a bit of a mix. I've tried to kind of keep communication as open as possible so we can find out if there's an issue.
Okay. I'd just like to pick up a few things that were said in the meeting. There was a question about putting up more CCTV. I don't think that's a question for now. That's a broader question for maybe the council. There's a question about whether security staff will be on site. Is there a condition to that effect?
We have, in our plans and policies, any event that is out of hours, that is outdoors, we always have security as part of it.
So I don't think I can't see a condition to that effect. You're saying it's your policy? It's
part of our policy. I'm not sure what the security deal is during the day when the museum's generally open to the public, but I'm not sure whether that's as relevant.
When you mean security in the evening, are you talking about SIA door supervisors? Or
yes.
You are?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there is a condition to that effect. Each individual who is to carry out a security activity at the premises must be licensed by the Security Industry Authority. You're required to have a security policy. Okay. What does your security policy say about the use of security staff during events?
That we have them at out of hours event, so events after the museum has closed to the general public, and specifics about them being SIA trained, signing in on a log, that they have certain levels of first aid training, that kind of thing.
And when does the museum close?
5 p.m. That's right,
5
isn't it, Emma? Yeah. Tuesday to Sunday will be the opening.
Okay. And when we, from memory, when we had the application in 2014, there was a lot about having a member of staff on site, and there was a commitment to make a telephone number available to residents, and I see that was included in the license in condition 50.
And that's in place.
That's in place, but
yeah,
I thought that Mr. Greck and Mr. O'Brien said that they didn't have a telephone number, or they couldn't contact you. So is that what you said? There was someone's wife girlfriend had to walk over.
Yeah, my poor pregnant girlfriend had to walk over there. Yeah, that was because we didn't have one. There may be one in place now, but it would be great to have it. But we didn't have it at the time. I think that was 2018.
That was, I believe, before it. Since I've worked there, we've had the operations number, and while I don't have all the email addresses of all the neighbours who might be affected, I have a list of those who've opted in, and all of those people I've sent the number. David suggested that we add it to our website somewhere as well, so it's an out of hours number that can be called, which we're happy to do.
I definitely think you need to improve your communication, because to say you put an advert in the paper is ridiculous to me. I mean, come on, we're next door, and you said earlier that you had complaints from the Jeffrey estate. I think if you'd put flyers in people's letterboxes saying that you're applying for this, you'd have a lot more people on this call. We happened to find out about it by chance, so I think you can't just put an advert in a paper. That's crazy.
So I think I was going to touch on that briefly. The communications here seem to have broken down and they've not been good. But you're saying that that's because you're on maternity leave?
Yeah, it made me sad to hear that there's suspicion that we tried to sneakily put this license in, because it's really not the case. I know we have previously sent out letters and stuff. Genuinely, I just came back from maternity leave at the start of October when this had just gone in. We've had no one in the building and teams furloughed. My replacement was furloughed and came back part-time just before we did a crossover. So we did what she did with the application was what the basic requirements are of the application, which is putting posters around the perimeter of the building and putting an advert in the paper. But I don't think that she'd ever had cause to be in touch with any of the neighbours list because she hadn't run any events because of COVID. Emma, who's on the call, she is a person who also normally organises some of these mail outs. So I don't know if you want to jump in quickly, Emma.
Yeah, absolutely. I was just going to say the same, that like we say, it's been an exceptional year for everybody, obviously, and for the museum. And so just a really unfortunate combination of staff being on leave, furlough, and very few staff being in the building at all over the summer, and still a very skeleton team on site, meant that we weren't able to do the level of communications that we usually like to do. But absolutely, that's something that we're committed to doing going forward. So Tanith mentioned a kind of opt-in email for our neighbours, and we're really happy to continue with that and do regular updates to our neighbours. So it really is down to an exceptional year and circumstances that hasn't taken place as best we would.
Okay.
Chair, I've got a query on that. If that's the case, then there's a letter in here dated the 16th of November in Miss Linda's name. It says, "Dear neighbours." So that would make me think that that letter would have been sent out to neighbours, but it seems it hasn't.
This is the letter that I sent to Scenario. This is in response of the. This is if it's November of this year. It's in response to the neighbours' representations, which Scenario said then she would email through to everyone who'd been in touch to make a representation.
Okay.
So
Pardon?
Sorry, the people making representations had this letter.
Via the council after we made representations, but the point is that we only found out about this license by chance because they didn't contact any neighbours.
Right, okay, that's what I wanted to clarify. Thank you. So that letter came after you put the references. Okay, thank you.
So, Ms. Linden, I think what we need to probably hear from you is your response to Mr. Greck's suggestion that there be a restriction on the on people taking going outside for licensable activities after, say, 7 p.m.
After 7 p.m.
Yeah.
I would be more happy to agree maybe a limit of events where we can do later than that. Like I say, we're not looking to host stuff every night of the week all year round, but quite honestly, doing a limited period with some hired events on the front lawns is a really invaluable source of income for us. Once we have the museum indoor spaces open, we'll know better how much we can do in those other indoor spaces, and that will become much more of a reliable stream of income. But stopping any events at 7 p.m, that means we would only have 2 hours, well, less than that even, from when the museum closed, which isn't really enough time to host anything. I'd be keen to kind of look at if there are things that we can do that reduce that issue with the recorded music noise. I know we've discussed there are licensable issues that it doesn't touch, but I think we have to be able to come to a position of being able to work together and trust each other a little bit on how we run the events, because it's not in our interest to make massive enemies of our neighbours. We obviously need to do things to create income for the museum, but we also want to do those things inside. The outdoors isn't our only space.
So I'm slightly concerned that I think we had a very similar discussion a couple of years ago, and that there isn't a lot of trust. There's a lot of love coming from your neighbours to the museum, but not a lot of trust. If we were to go with Miss Koch's suggestion of, say, a 9:30 p.m, does that give you enough time to put on evening events?
What's the 9:30 p.m. cut-off? Is that sale of alcohol?
That's not being. You're not allowed to have people outside doing licensable activities during that time.
It's something I'd probably like to think about a little bit, just logistically. I think it's better. I think it would definitely cause some issues. Ideally, I'd like a little bit just to think about that and maybe discuss that.
So, Mr. Court. Sorry, Mr. Greg.
I was just going to raise one point about there is if we were doing daytime events, you do still have Saturdays and Sundays. I was just going to raise that point.
Mr. O'Brien.
You're on mute.
Yeah, I beg your pardon. Yeah, I would just sort of reiterate. It seemed to me immensely sensible to think of this along the same lines as you do with a pub on a residential street. That, you know, it's very, very common, you know, in Hackney pubs to have everyone inside after 8:30 or something. I think it would seem very, very sensible given the proximity of a load of people's beds to their garden. Yeah, just that was all.
Okay, and Ms. Dixon, you've got your hand up. Is that?
You're on mute.
Yeah, sorry about that. No, I just wanted to just clarify where our discussion around hours, if that's related currently just to outside.
Yes.
Yes.
And is it, sorry, we're talking about it at the 9:30, then we're either guests who are outside go inside or they leave. That's the leave the premises.
Yeah. It's outside that seems to be causing the problems to your neighbours while you're inside of it. Well, it is at the moment.
Yeah. Did either you, Ms. Linden or Ms. Dixon, have any further views on that?
Yes. So yes, I mean the comparison with a local pub where customers are asked to go inside is slightly different from us because our spaces inside are different from going just from a pub garden to inside a pub because they are museum spaces.
You had a cafe area as well, didn't you? Or you did do, right?
That's a different. The cafe area is now the museum reception, so that's now a standard. It's not a cafe area anymore; it's a museum space.
So you don't have a cafe area?
There's a cafe area that's on another element of the site that isn't part of this licensing application.
Okay.
So yes, I just wanted to make that point. With regards to the later hours, can you just clarify when you talk about that cut-off time? Is that just the ending of the sale of the serving of alcohol at that point?
No. So I think what we would need to do is say that there would be no one allowed in that outside area during that time.
And is this all days of the week, or are we looking at specific days, or are there any other?
So I think the representations from Mr. Greg, Ms. Koch and Mr. O'Brien were all days of the week. Is that right?
That's correct, yeah.
Yeah. Councillor Patrick, you've got your hand up.
Sorry, did I? So I asked my question.
Okay. So, Ms. Linden and Ms. Dixon, any further thoughts?
I think the issue of the number of days is interesting because, like we've said, the license has been put in for 7 days a week. We have no intention of being a 7 days a week venue. This is to allow us flexibility to offer a range of events for different groups through the week, but we would not intend to be a 7 day a week. So is that something to talk about on the numbers of days of the week or the differences on different days of the week?
The concerns are for all days of the week. So, and I think, you know, we've got quite a lot of the noise complaints throughout the summer of 2019, and we've heard there's whether it's a statutory nuisance or some sort of nuisance of residents who are very close and are very sensitive to that noise, sensitive not in a pejorative sense, but just because of the proximity of those residents. So, what can you provide some reassurance that you're going to run this venue that won't, in a way, won't exacerbate and continue this nuisance?
Sorry, could you repeat that? It cut out a bit.
What reassurance can you provide myself and Councillor Patrick that if we were to grant a licence that would allow you 7 days a week to have events in that garden, we were to do that you wouldn't be causing a nuisance to these neighbours in the way that they've described to us? It seems to us that part of the way of doing that is to restrict the length of time that you could host events outside.
Can I just ask another question? Just so once we're looking at different hours for inside, is what you're suggesting?
Yeah.
Broadly, yeah.
No, nobody is commenting. No one's seems to have a problem with the inside hours. So I mean, we're either looking at you restricting the hours outside, as has been suggested, to 9, or I don't know if you've got another suggestion that you ask for later hours, perhaps for Fridays and Saturdays only, which I don't know what the residents think of that.
I mean, the only other suggestion I would bring up in terms of that would be like a fixed limited number of outdoor events within a year, like a fixed number of days, with all the same kind of agreements that we would be making about, which I know are things that would be in a noise management plan rather than something that is licensed.
So the problem with that is that it would be broadly unenforceable, because the officers wouldn't know where you are through in your number of events. You would, however, still have the opportunity to use temporary event notices.
Okay. Could we push it from 9:30 to 10?
I mean, if you do that, then you're going to be preventing people in Sovereign Mews from being able to sleep, aren't you?
Well, just a suggestion of 9:30 to 10, and then agree on that.
May I just
stop serving at 9:30, and then everyone's off by 10. So we're moving that half-hour period of grace drinking up time. What we did have in our application about 10:30, then it's 9:30, and then we've got everyone either indoors or gone by 10 p.m. Is that something that's doable?
May I respond to that? I think it's worth adding that the 9:30 came from Emma Koch, not from Dan and I. I think Dan and I are kind of united, I think, in the fact that 9:30 is too late. And so I think 10 p.m. does not sound great at all to me. I mean, as I said, we've had kids in the Mews who go to sleep at 6 p.m. Who have been disturbed by this. So no, that doesn't provide much reassurance. And again, we're talking about 7 days a week being part of the current provisions, which is alarming.
Yeah. So you're in the 7 p.m. camp, are you?
I am, yeah. I mean, it's still after baby bedtime, but that's better at least.
Yeah. And as I say to the applicant, there is quite a lot of evidence that we have in front of us that you running this, using the outdoor areas, has been causing a nuisance to your neighbours, and indeed keeping kids up past their bedtime. In all good conscience, where I'm looking at granting a licence to anywhere near that would be undermining the licensing objective and causing a nuisance to your neighbours. I think you need to try and help us to get comfortable with granting you some sort of license, or else I don't know. We'll have to you.
Okay. Well, I mean, can we? is the 9:30 now off the table, or is that still something that is something that people would be comfortable with for outdoor spaces?
So I think Mr. Greck and Mr. O'Brien aren't comfortable with that. Ms. Koch apparently would be comfortable with that, albeit she suggested 9 PM on Sundays and bank holidays. Councillor Patrick, do you have a view? Sharon, are you there? Okay. Well, I think she's having some connectivity. Maybe you might want to see if you can help her with that. We'll just pause briefly while we try to re-establish that connection. Mario, are you looking into that?
So,
I've just got Mario a hangout.
I think she may have frozen, so she just needs to go out and come back again.
Apologies, Mr. Chairman. May I make one more point just from Emma's points? I just sort of draw your attention to the fact that she has requested that both noise and alcohol be limited up to 9:30. I think we've concluded in this meeting that there can't really be limits on noise at all. So I can't speak for her, obviously, but I would imagine that if she was here, she'd be alarmed at the fact that it appears the sort of discussion in this meeting suggests that the recorded music issue is not something that can be sort of restricted.
Well, so the way in which we're seeking to allay concerns in light of that is to keep people, only allow people inside during the evening, right?
Yeah, I mean that would be fantastic.
Yeah. Well, I think we'll have to pause, as I say, to allow Councillor Patrick to get back into the meeting. But while we're doing that, I think it would be helpful for Ms. Linden and Ms. Dixon to think about whether this sort of restriction, maybe to a 9:30, would allow you to do what you to generate enough money to keep the museum going, or rather,
I think
that would be a useful amount of time for evening events.
I think it's something that we can work with for outdoor events. You know, as I said, we've got lots of indoor spaces now, which are going to be our main selling spaces. You know, they're year-round spaces. They're newly built. We can't wait to use them. Trying to fit something on a soggy lawn is not our number one priority. It would be great that we can still do some things in the evenings. You know, we've had a variety of events which have worked, which would be nice to be able to license. You know, we don't just do corporate parties. You know, we've had nice cinema on wireless headphones, and it's lovely to be able to serve people a beer while they're watching a film, which we can't start until it's later on because of the light. So I'd like people to just bear that in mind, that the hours are to allow us to do more things than the things that unfortunately we now know have bothered you. But I think that me and Emma would be happy to go with the 9:30, we call it, on the outdoor events, and the indoor events are as the application hours states.
Okay, I think I have slipped into continuing the meeting, but we can't because it needs to be part of the decision making. So
okay. May I ask a question just of Dan and Max? I'm just curious to know if you guys have you received in the last few years kind of the emails that we've sent to Sovereign Muse?
I don't think I have received emails. No, I remember when the Jeffrey Museum used to write to us as residents. You know, like when you were opening something, you'd say, "We'd like you to invite you to this," and like there was, and the fact that knowing that you can do that, I think, is why it was kind of upsetting that we didn't get anything. Like if you can, I know that there's been a pandemic, but you've managed to apply for a license. So I just thought writing to some neighbours wouldn't have been too difficult. But
yeah. I would say, I mean, I do genuinely apologise for that, because it is genuinely an oversight that you didn't get a letter. But the emails that I sent on the group, they've gone to a few key people in Sovereign Muse, like Robert, who always said he'd send it round. But if you're happy to have your email address kind of added to my list,
yeah, very
it's
much
not
so, yeah.
it's not to spam you, it's just to send you a kind of upcoming in the next few months. This is what's going to happen. Sorry,
no, that's okay. Councillor Patrick is back in the meeting. Can you hear us?
I can. Sorry, I apologise for that, but I had to go all the way out, close my computer, and wait for it to restart to get back in. So I do apologise.
You didn't miss anything. We would just they were just discussing the communication.
That's okay.
And then Ms. Linden was also telling us about whether a 9:30 requiring any customers or patrons to be inside the building after 9:30 would allow a sufficient period of time to be able to meaningfully host events. So, Ms. Linden, what were you saying?
I mean, the thing is, we've heard from the residents that there is noise nuisance in their properties from the garden, and it does seem to be the garden that's causing the problem. And I'm very concerned that if we give a license to the garden without some sort of restriction on hours, and I think 9:30 is very generous, that these residents are going to carry on being affected by the noise from the museum. I mean, you don't really expect to live next to a museum and be bothered by loud music coming out their garden, even at 9:30 at night, really. I mean, it's not a pub or a club.
So the point at which we discovered that you were no longer part of the meeting was when I came to you to, Mr. Breck and Mr. O'Brien had said that they certainly didn't support the 9:30 closure of the outdoor area, and that they would be comfortable with 7 p.m. closure. And I was wondering what your thoughts were on that.
I mean, 7 does seem slightly early, but maybe 8 o'clock as a cut. Or the other thing I could suggest is that the museum has later opening hours, perhaps on a Friday and Saturday, and we only license the garden for Friday and Saturday to say 9:30, and the garden isn't licensed during the week, beyond 5 o'clock or something, or whatever.
So I think so during the week people would have to be indoors by 5:30, so that you wouldn't be able to have evening events during the week. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, that's a suggestion. It's a suggestion that would get around the noise that's affecting people when they have to get up for work and children have to get up for school. Whereas Fridays and Saturday, I mean, I understand the museums wants to use their garden, but also we have to protect local residents. So that would give, perhaps the museum could have a later hours on Fridays and Saturdays, which the local residents would agree to, and they wouldn't be affected by noise at all during the week, which seems like a compromise.
Linda Dixon, are you envisaging running a lot of events during the week and in the after hours during the week?
An issue with limiting to Friday and Saturday is that where we've had a lot of success is with kind of corporate summer events where they come to us mid-afternoon and then they leave mid-evening, and the most popular days are Wednesday, Thursday. So I very much appreciate about working week for people. I think for us a compromise ending those events earlier. I think that's workable, and we can try and push them to an earlier start. But actually just doing them on Fridays and Saturdays, we just would lose a lot of those bookings. And I think we'd have to try and focus more on kind of maybe ticketed customer events rather than it just being a kind of block hire booking. So it would have a financial impact, I think.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, may I just say, from my perspective, I think Councillor Patrick's suggestion of some sort of 5:30 p.m. weekday cut-off, 9:30 Friday, Saturday would be I'm very amenable to that.
And what about a 5:30 weekday, well, 9:30 Thursday, Friday, Saturday?
I mean, that's less ideal, but it's better than 24/7. Yeah, I'd certainly opt for the former if at all possible. I don't know what Dan feels.
Yeah, I mean, I agree that shorter hours in the week and longer hours on the Friday and Saturday are better. But like Max says, 5:30 weekdays and 9:30 Friday, Saturday would be better. But if we had to agree to 9:30 on a Thursday, and that meant that we at least had the restrictions, that would still be better. Yeah.
Okay. So, Ms. Linden. So, Ms. Linden.
I suppose one thing to say, like, part of the issue of clustering it is then you're more likely to have back-to-back events as well. Whereas if we have more open, then we can spread things out. I don't know if that makes a difference to you guys from a neighbour's perspective.
Because you did touch on the fact that you didn't plan to have many events, but you've never actually said, just out of interest, not that I think that therefore licensing should be allowed to be late or week, just out of interest, what sort of number of events are you thinking?
A figure that we talked about with one of our partners has been like 20 events in a year. So 20 days where we might do an evening event that goes later. So we're not looking to increase that amount massively on the front lawns. We're looking to use our other spaces, but that's the number that we're looking at with our partner.
Oh, sorry, Dan. If it is 20 events a year, then I wouldn't be at all concerned about the clustering around Thursday, Friday.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, I still.
Ms. Dixon.
Can I? Oh yes, I was just going to add in that talking through different days of the week. One of the things, obviously, we've talked about a lot is that these events are about the museum being sustainable for the future, and so to give the museum the opportunity to run the events that will help us with our finances is what the license is for. Absolutely not in any way to create disturbance. So if the Wednesday could be in there, I think that would be beneficial. Like Tanith mentioned, some of the clients that we work with, that is a good night, a good day of the week to provide an opportunity. So just
you do have inside event space, right?
Yes, yeah, we do have an inside event space as well. Yeah.
So, Mr. O'Brien, have you got your hand up?
I beg your pardon, I didn't mean to, but yeah, I mean, yeah, obviously Wednesdays inside would be far preferable to Wednesdays outside.
Yeah, and nothing that we're doing would affect your ability to have stuff inside. At the moment, you're saying that the event space that you have inside isn't included in this license application. Is that right?
No, I thought it's just the cafe.
They're all included.
It's just the cafe. It's just the cafe. It's not included because if I remember from the previous application, it's going to be run by a different applicant. So
yeah, it's in a different space.
So
and
museum,
it's a different license.
Yeah.
Where is it?
It's on the far corner, the opposite corner to Sovereign Muse where these guys live. It's on the corner of Creamer Street and Jeffrey Street.
Okay. So I think Well, Mr. Greck and Mr. O'Brien are going to tell me that Wednesday, having external events in that garden on a Wednesday evening is a step far too far, I think. Yeah. I think we might have explored everything we can explore in this discussion. But I'm going to pause slightly. I'm going to ask Ms. North and Subra if there is anything that you think we haven't explored we should do.
No, I think you've explored everything.
Okay. Councillor Patrick, did you want to touch on anything else?
No, I think we've gone as far as we can. I mean, I think the suggestion is 9:30 Thursday, Friday, Saturday outside, and no events after 5:30 during the week, which seems to. I mean, the residents have gone from saying nothing outside, nothing past 7 to 9:30, 3 nights a week. And I understand the museum wants an extra night, but I think the residents have compromised.
Okay, thank you. Before we come to everyone coming up, I just want to touch on this question of wireless headphones. So in the noise management plan, there is reference to wireless headphones. There's all the background noise, is that? In the license itself, I'm just searching through it. There is also reference to wireless headphones.
It's a condition that has passed through several licenses that if we did any outdoor cinema, it'd be through wireless headphones. And I added into the noise management plan the option of doing like a silent disco with headphones as well.
Okay.
But that's the one. It's specific to outdoor cinema.
Can you point me to where that is in the license conditions, current license conditions?
I'm not sure I can, I'm afraid. I don't have it open, so I've scrolled it through as well.
So it's in the application, outdoor film screening sound will be broadcast with use of wireless headphones. So I think we need to make sure that there's an actual license condition to that effect. Ms. North, can you make a note of that? And Ms. Linden, you're happy for that to be the case, right?
Yeah, that's how we've been operating for the last few years.
Okay, so now there's an opportunity for people to sum up, and if we go with Mr. O'Brien, Mr. Greck, and then the applicant, you don't need to sum up, but if you have any final statements, then please do, or anything that we've missed, then please do let us know.
Sure. I mean, I think we've said everything we need to say, and I appreciate the suggestions of the councillors to offer some kind of time limitation. That seems very sensible. I would just urge you to make a decision along those lines if that's possible, but to protect us from, you know, what could be the eventuality of having weddings, corporate events, DJs. You know, this form. You know, it could be with tough times ahead for people in the museum sector, and as with all of us. The chances are they might want to do more and more events to keep the museum alive and push things later and later. You know, more corporate events, more weddings, and I would just graciously appreciate it, as I'm sure all the residents of Sovereign Mews would, if you can kind of protect us from that eventuality with some more reasonable licensing restrictions and licensing hours. Thanks.
Okay. Mr. Greck?
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with Max. And yeah, it is just fair to say that is a good compromise, because obviously Max and I did start by saying it'd be nice to not have any music in any evening at all. And so by agreeing to 9:30 Thursday, Friday and Saturday, that is quite a compromise. So
Okay, thank you. Ms. Linden, can you, if you've got anything that you want to sum up with, then feel free. And if you could let us know what you think about what is now the suggestion on the table.
Yeah, I suppose my summary is that obviously our intention isn't to upset our neighbours, and we don't want to keep up kids. It's unfortunate that some things have happened, that there have been issues over however many years the museum has now been trying to do these sorts of events. We will find a way to operate with the 9:30 p.m. finish Thursday, Friday, Saturday. I thought I would ask if it would be possible to push to 7 p.m. the other days, just in case we can have something that's afternoon and then we call it at 7 p.m. because I think we've agreed that's quite an early time. Again, just to remind you, this isn't all looking at it being events that involve music or a corporate hire. This could be any other sort of our events that we have opening the museum later for the general public, and the license allows us to have a van that serves food and drink on the lawns. So that would be one last request on that. Otherwise, thank you to both of you neighbours for compromising, because I recognise this is a difficult issue and you have moved some way from your position to find something between what's been said. So I appreciate that. I don't know, Emma, if you have anything to add on that.
I just dropped out a second and I didn't hear what you said about the last request. You said something about a van or something. I came back in, I heard you say something, but I didn't catch it.
Just I wanted to remind people that, you know, the license is to involve all kinds of things. It's broad to allow for things, not just for hires that might include, you know, music, people drinking loads. We also may have a museum late in the summer, which would be open to all families. And it's nice to be able to have a license so that we could do something like serve people a glass of wine on the front lawns. It's not a club night or anything, you know.
I think you mentioned a food van.
Yeah, sorry. Food and drink that we've got within our premises, and that's what the license is to cover.
If I could just add on that suggestion, so I echo everything that Tanith has said. You know, what we're trying to do here is create a sustainable museum, and absolutely it's not our intention to upset our neighbours at all. We're really committed to having a really open line of communication with you all, and we're sorry that seems to have fallen down a little bit over the past year. That 7 p.m. extension on the other days, if that would be something that we could discuss, would benefit us, because although we've primarily focused on those events outside that are perhaps involving our corporate hires and our private events, like Tanith mentioned, we also run museum later openings for the museum for anybody, and that often means that would give us the opportunity to be able to open the gardens a bit later for people to have a drink in the gardens. Again, all gone by 7, but it would just give us that little bit more flexibility to do some slight other kinds of events as well, and would mean that we could maintain that quite confidently.
So in 2018, I have a feeling that we had a very similar conversation. What was said then was that there were a relatively large number of objections from residents, and I think what was said by the subcommittee at that time was that a time-limited license was an opportunity for the Jeffrey Museum to build trust with neighbours, and then to come back and ask for another license when the refurbishment was completed. We recognised there was a need for income and to be able to use that outside area to generate that income, because this is a much loved museum, as we've heard this evening. What I don't happen is that the trust that is from neighbours has been built over that period. We've heard that there's been a nuisance to those neighbours. We have complaints to the environmental the noise team at the council, and the result is that we're here talking about a licence application. We have a number of residents here, and a suggestion that there may be others if communication with neighbours have been fuller. So it's extremely difficult for us to go as far as the suggestion that was of 5:30 and then 9:30 Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. But again, there is always an opportunity to come back and ask for a variation license. But if you do that, you will need to really try to build that trust with the neighbours that you can operate that external area without keeping their kids up and without keeping them up at night. That, I think, probably communicates my thoughts on that suggestion of 7 p.m. from Monday, Tuesday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. But Councillor Patrick may have other ideas.
No, I agree with you, Chair, unless the residents decided to agree to it. But otherwise, I agree with you, Chair, that I think the museum needs to build that trust. Because I remember there was a very heated debate when they came for the temporary, just a sheer coincidence that me and you are here again, hearing this, that there was a heated debate from residents who were very concerned about the way the museum had operated. And although unfortunately it's been closed this year, but the year it was operating, there was complaints to, we don't even know if the complaints that went to the council were the same complaints that the museum got. And we also know lots of people I know that people are affected for noise and antisocial behaviour, we don't necessarily raise their complaints anyway. So there's probably more people being disturbed than actually sort of said so. No, I think it's down to the residents. But if the residents don't want to go to 7 o'clock, then
I think, like you said, like if we start by saying 5:30 Sunday to Wednesday, and we've kindly said we'd go to 9:30 Friday and Saturday, and then if we find that actually we're not disturbed by any of those events, then maybe we can have this conversation again next time around. But like you just said, there's been a lot of complaints. We're all here. I think there'd be a lot more people here if there had been letters sent out about this meeting. So I think we're actually really compromising for now quite a lot, and we can totally have this conversation again.
I would agree with Dan there. I was there in that previous meeting, I think, with yourselves, Councillor Peters and Councillor Patrick, and as you said, we did agree that there would be a kind of test period, and 2018 in particular, more so than 2019, did not go particularly well. And so, yeah, I'd sort of respectfully ask us to stick with, I think it was Councillor Patrick's original suggestion of the kind of 5:30, 9:30, but with the concession around the 9:30 on Thursday. I think that sounds fair enough.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Patrick and I will need to consider that, and I think we'll probably have to retire in order to do so. We will let you all know the outcome of our deliberations very shortly, or other officers will. And thank you everyone for coming this evening. It's been a good conversation in which I think there's been understanding from each side, and I hope that certainly the Jeffrey Museum, you go away and whatever we decide to try and make sure that you have that positive relationship with your neighbours. In which case, unless anyone has anything else to say, we will continue meeting, myself and Councillor Patrick and officers. Thank you very much for everyone else for coming along.
Thank you.
okay.